Hello, my name's Dr. Dion Wiseman. I've been asked to do a short video presentation on how to make a poster presentation or an illustrated paper presentation. So first, just using this poster as an example, I just wanted to talk about posters versus oral paper presentations. Frequently, people have an option of either doing a poster presentation or a conventional oral paper presentation, and when should you choose to do a poster versus an oral paper? The general rule of thumb is that if what you're doing lends itself to graphic communication as opposed to oral communication, it might be advisable or better to convey your message through a poster. So posters are supposed to be very graphic. They're supposed to have lots of maps, figures, tables, diagrams, pictures, and things like that on them, and less text than you'd probably expect. So if your poster lends itself to that kind of presentation where you have lots of graphics and you require less text in order to get your message across, then a poster is probably the better choice. So this poster is on what's called a standard ANSI, A-N-S-I, E-size sheet. It's 33 inches tall by 44 inches wide. That's a very common size for a poster presentation. Many conferences have upper limits on how large your poster can be. They don't usually have lower limits. This is a common size because lots of large format printers print at this size, and paper that's 33 inches wide is more common than other paper sizes. This poster is orientated in what's called landscape orientation, so it's wider than it is tall. Another option would be a poster like this, and this is portrait style orientation, so it's taller and narrower. So either format is fine. For some reason, this tends to be the more common format, landscape orientation. Okay, the next thing I was going to talk about is just the design and arrangement of what are essentially the essential poster elements or parts of the poster. You can have tremendous content and a really good research project, but if the layout and design of the poster is poor and you're not able to convey your message, then the poster really isn't that effective a tool at communicating your research, right? So the elements of the poster are essentially starting at the top, and first and foremost, the title itself, right? That should be one of the first things that the poster reader looks at. Hey, what's that poster about? Their eye might first be drawn to some interesting figures or illustrations here, and then they're going to go, what's that about? Then they're going to look at your title. So your title should be descriptive and informative. Staying up in this area then, there's some acknowledgement of who the authors of the research or the poster are. The little banners up here are just acknowledgements for the organizations that were involved. And then there's all the text boxes, maps, figures, and so on that are arranged on the poster itself. So in most of the Western world, we read books, for example, or newspapers from upper left to lower right. And on a landscape-oriented poster presentation, we follow the same general rule. Although we might organize things as they are in this one in columns, kind of like a newspaper. So there's one column here, then these three colored columns are the next areas that the poster reader is intended to read, and then finally this one. So we've laid out or arranged things in some kind of logical and familiar order. Now, in terms of the individual parts, a poster, like any research project, like a thesis or even a dissertation or a term paper, has kind of necessary parts or elements in it, right? So there's an introduction, methods. These are more individual results of each of these methods is presented over here, a discussion, conclusions, and then finally, acknowledgements and any references that are included. So this has been I think a pretty successful format. Now, in terms of the organization of the figures, that really depends on the content of your poster itself. How many figures also kind of depends on the content of the poster. But you can see that there's more figures, or almost as many figures here as there is text on the poster itself. Now, people will normally be drawn or attracted to a poster because of its layout and design more so than its content, because they don't know what the content is until they start reading it, and they don't start reading it until they actually get interested enough to read the title and then maybe go to the introduction, right? So you need to make it as easy as possible for the map readers of color. So you can see that there's a color scheme here with blue and white. In some cases, the text boxes can have lightly shaded backgrounds. That can be important or useful for kind of making things look like they're popping off the page. You can see that the colors here they're all different hues, but they're approximately the same shade or level of brightness or saturation, so that one isn't more overpowering than the other. They're kind of centered. So one of the other elements of a poster presentation is the balance of the poster overall and where the the poster interpreter's eye or attention is drawn. And you shouldn't have all the figures crammed over on one side and all the text crammed over on the other side. They should be integrated in flow so that as the person's reading the text, the figures are presented at approximately the proper point in time as the person is reading through the poster. For the poster interpreter or reader to get through your poster, organize things in some kind of logical fashion. Text size should ideally be about 20 point size. So the text here is about 20 to 22 point size. The titles are larger, of course, because they're more important or more significant. Over here under the acknowledgements and the references, because that's not super important information, it's of a smaller text size, and that's okay. Because if somebody reads something in here and they want to go and look at the reference for it, they can walk up to the poster and look at it. But the general rule of thumb is that somebody should be able to stand approximately an arm's length away, or your arm's length away, so 5 feet away, and be able to read a poster. The other reason is that you don't want people walking up to your poster and having to read it like this, because then only 2 or 3 people can read it at one time, right? So you want the font to be of a sufficient size so that people can read it from about 5 feet away, okay? You can also see that in addition to using different colors over here and little banners, colored banners here where the titles are, that each of these areas has a neat line that goes around the entire box so that it compartmentalizes all this text and these figures and graphics together. And text boxes and these neat lines, they're called, are also a very effective way of grouping together information that you want presented together and leading the map reader, or sorry, I keep saying map reader, I mean poster reader or interpreter through the entire composition. The amount of text versus the number of figures and illustrations. What we find is that any more than about 3 minutes worth of reading or text is almost too much. So 3 to 5 minutes maximum. So if you lay out your poster prior to actually printing it and you read through your text slowly and time yourself, it should take approximately 3, but no more than 5 minutes for you to read all the text. One other thing I should note is that including figures and tables and pretty pictures isn't effective unless you reference those figures in the text. So you don't have to explain what's in the figure necessarily. The figure should be self-explanatory. And that's why a graphic poster presentation is so much more useful. But you should have at different points in your presentation some reference to the figure. So here's a little bit of text here, and it draws the reader's attention to figure 2A and 2B. So the map reader will go down and they'll realize, okay, we're talking about this figure and this figure. So that's pretty important too. Otherwise, the text and the figures kind of become disjointed and the reader's not sure what you're referring to when. Okay. So I think that covers the basics. So thank you, and if there are any questions, you can email these guys.